Hey Denver, it's Bree. Former Broncos wide receiver Demaryius Thomas was an amazing dude. As news of his passing hit the internet, voices from across Denver, the NFL, and popular culture at large shared stories of the football player's kindness and deep care for others. Demaryius was a Bronco for close to a decade, including Denver's Super Bowl 50 win, and that meant a lot to this city. We knew it was incredibly important to honor Demaryius' legacy as a player and a person connected to Denver, so we reached out to our friends at the DNVR Sports Network. Over the weekend, they shared a raw and beautiful conversation about Demaryius Thomas that we wanted to bring to you. It's not easy to sum up a person's life, but we think the folks over at DNVR did an admirable job. Thanks, Demaryius. Denver appreciates you.
Welcome into the Denver Sports Podcast presented by Breckenridge Brewery. I'm your host, Allie Monroy, and today's show is going to be a bit different. Late last night, Broncos Country found out about the passing of Demaryius Thomas, a legend on and off the field. Our hearts go out to his mom, his sisters, his family, his teammates, and all of his loved ones. Everyone you talk to has a story about DT, and right now you can feel the impact he had on every person he met, every teammate he played with, and every person who watched him play. As Ryan Koenigsberg wrote in his article on thednvr.com, Demaryius Thomas turned darkness into light. So today, we're going to spend this episode remembering Demaryius Thomas. We're going to have multiple members of DNVR join us to share their favorite memories. And we're also going to read some of the moments our listeners and our community have shared with us. So if you have any memories you want to drop in the comments or in the chat, please do so. This is a safe space for us to all just feel our feels and really talk and remember and be sad and be happy and just mourn and remember Demaryius Thomas for the man he was on and off the field. I'm joined by Ryan Koenigsberg, Zach Stevens, Justin Michael, and Eric Weedham. Later on, I will be joined by Michaela Perkins and Spencer Smith. And then we will talk to you guys, the community, and share your stories that you have so thoughtfully shared with us. So let's get started. Ryan, you covered Demaryius Thomas for years. You wrote multiple stories on him. You had a personal connection with him. How are you feeling right now? What's something that you're thinking of today? What's a memory that you want to share with us?
I mean, I wrote this in the article, but the biggest thing that stood out to me is his warmth, the warmth that he exuded when you were around him, and it's why it's just so heartbreaking today. And you notice that every single person that he had any sort of interaction with feels this, and obviously, like you mentioned off the top, you just feel it so much for his loved ones, his family. His mom, of course. And so it's just devastating. 33 years old. He had so much life to live and so much to give. And it really, really sucks. It really, really sucks. As for memories, interesting. I mean, I've talked a lot about, the time in the locker room when he was so banged up after the game, he couldn't even roll down the collar on his shirt. He asked me to roll down his collar. We had a long conversation that night just about the toughness that he exuded on the field and brought out there. And, he said, if I can walk, I can play. And it was, that's the type of warrior that he was. But the one that's really sticking out to me today is at Super Bowl 50. And on media night, I didn't actually get a chance to talk to DT, but I talked to Josh Norman, who was going to be who he was matching up with that in that game. And Josh Norman was talking all the shit. I had brought up to Josh that they had really struggled against bigger, stronger wide receivers this year, the Panthers, of course. And I was like, does that, worry you at all having to go up against DT? And he was like, why would I be scared of Demaryius Thomas? Like, are you kidding me? I've got this, that, the other thing. I've got all these guys. I'm not scared of Demaryius Thomas. So, of course, the next day I'm like ready to go. So I write that article, and then I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna tell DT about this and get him riled up, and get an even better story out of it. And when I brought it up to DT, he just laughed. He wasn't mad. He didn't give me any sort of reactionary quote. But he just laughed and was like, yeah, we'll see. I guess we'll see. I don't know. We'll take care of it on Sunday. And the reason why that's coming up for me so much today is because it was like at that moment that I knew the Broncos were going to win the Super Bowl, because the Panthers had brought this fake tough guy attitude to all of their press that week. And just seeing DT like so absolutely unbothered by that and so confident in his squad. And, obviously the Broncos go on to win, but it was just like that, a little microcosm of who he was. And then the other one that I keep thinking about today is the Broncos. Maybe Zach, you can correct me on this. They were either 3-0 or 4-0 in that first year with Trevor Siemian. Do you remember was it 4-0?
Yep.
So they're 4-0, but the offense is very different than it used to be, of course, with Peyton Manning not there. And so Emmanuel Sanders is asked, like, how are you guys feeling about the offense? And he's like speaking on behalf of himself and DT. And he's like, we're wide receivers. We need the ball. We're divas. Like, me and DT were both divas. And this, that, and the other thing. And like, we need the football. Like, we love winning, but we also like need to get the rock. And so then, of course, DT comes up next, and they're like asking him about all this. And he was caught in such a weird position because he's not like that at all, but he doesn't want to like disagree with Emmanuel. So they're like, are you a diva? And he's like, I don't really know. They're like, well, Emmanuel called you a country diva. And he's like, all right, yeah, I guess that's okay. Like, I drive a Ford Raptor. It was just so funny because like he didn't know what to do. He was the furthest thing from a diva. Emmanuel couldn't have been more wrong about this, but he's not gonna like throw Emmanuel under the bus. It was just such a funny moment watching him like smirk up there, like, I don't know. But he was probably my favorite Bronco that I've covered, just working alongside him, and he never got flack from him, never got an eye roll from him. Always positive energy, positive vibes, and just the joy of a person to be around.
That grin is what everyone is remembering him by today. Just always having a smile, always lighting up the room, no matter if they lost or if they won. Zach, you also had a chance to cover Demaryius Thomas. What are you feeling today, and what's a favorite memory you have of your time covering DT?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that stands out about DT is that smile, Allie, and is that positive attitude, and is that welcoming spirit that he had, especially for me. My first season covering the team was during that 4-0 stretch that Ryan talked about in 2016 when things weren't going well, and there were kind of two guys that were always extremely welcoming to me in the locker room. And, coming in fresh out of college pretty much, and you're walking into the Denver Broncos locker room, the Super Bowl champion locker room, that's pretty intimidating, especially with all the personalities they had. And Demaryius Thomas and Todd Davis were the two guys that were the most welcoming to me. And I could go up and talk to Demaryius whenever. And I just thought that really, and especially these past 12 hours, we've seen that. Because whether it's talking about someone who was his best friend, like Eric Decker calling him a brother, and we've had a lot of people call him like a brother, or, a guy like me who knew him but certainly wasn't good friends with him, that he was always open to talk to and always nice. To the hundreds of pictures we've seen on Twitter, guys, of people saying, I met Demaryius Thomas, and not only did he take a picture with me, but then we were able to talk for 5 minutes. That's the type of guy that Demaryius was. And the last time I talked to him, which is probably the best story that I have with him, it was the Monday before they traded him. He knew he was on his way out. The Broncos just played a game Sunday. This was Monday, and then they traded him on Tuesday. He knew he was on his way out, and he could have easily just not been in the locker room, not been there, avoided the questions about it, because what a tough day. And so we all talked to him as a group, and then after, I went back around just to say thank you, and he wanted to talk. So we probably talked for about 10 minutes, and we got to talking about his Tebow days. And of course, as any wide receiver would, especially a true diva wide receiver, would not like those days. And one of the things that he kept saying about it was he was grateful for those days because he got to catch, one or two passes a game, because he got to block and be on the run that the Broncos went on in the magical season. I mean, Demaryius Thomas couldn't have been in a worse football situation for a wide receiver. And the thing that he said was that he was grateful for that. And that's something that just really stands with me, because one of the things about DT, the smile was always there. The positivity was always there. And that's just something that you don't find in life right now. And that was something that Demaryius Thomas was every single day of his life.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the Tebow days, and this is a guy who came from Georgia Tech, who was running the triple option offense. Like, that'll show you that a guy's not a diva, that he was willing to go there and block on 90% of the plays that he was on the field for. And of course, he was an absolute freak of nature when it came to his ability of size and strength and speed. So he could block the hell out of that triple option offense. And I think in his senior year, they threw the ball like 70 times, and he had 48 of those were catches for DT. But 78 times, there's several times in his NFL career where he personally caught more than that in a season. But that just goes to show you. He also had a really good stretch with Tim Tebow. I think he had something like 700 yards over a 6-week span or something crazy. Maybe that's a little too aggressive, but he had a crazy little stretch there with Tebow too. So he was a guy who didn't matter who was out there, he was going to make the most of his opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan, in 2011, he started 5 games. Now, he played in 11, but started 5 games with Tebow, and he had 551 yards. That may be his biggest accomplishment, is doing that with the not just Tim Tebow, not to bash on Tim, but the offense that just didn't throw the ball.
Yeah.
Number 1 rushing offense in the league. And, what's that, a 1,500-yard pace?
Yeah, exactly. One of my favorite things that I've seen is the relationship the relationship that Demaryius Thomas had with children and with Peyton Manning's kids. And Tyler Columbus posted a tweet saying about how he carried his son through the Super Bowl parade after winning the Super Bowl and everything. And you see everything he did in the community with the Boys and Girls Club. He just really, really loved being around kids and giving them and showing them love. And the videos that have come out from that have been my favorite to really see that kindness, that pure soul that he had. And besides just being a great football player, you even see Peyton Manning saying he was a Hall of Fame player. That's one of my favorite things that I've seen come out of this. Justin, what's your favorite memory of DT?
That's a tough one, just because there were so many. I mean, obviously, everybody thinks back to that Pittsburgh overtime win. I was fortunate in 2015 to be at that Broncos Patriots overtime game where C.J. Anderson scored, and I was sitting in the first row with my dad, and we were right by the Broncos bench, and like Brock Osweiler comes over and he high fives us all, and Demaryius Thomas actually he came over and he gave me these gloves.
Oh man!
Aww.
And just that that moment, it was the city was electric, everybody's pumped, and he was my favorite player, so like I was freaking out. And there was like a little kid 2 seats over, and I couldn't believe that he gave the gloves to me, but I was wearing a Demaryius Thomas jersey, so I guess that helped my cause. But I don't, just so many moments, like with him coming into the league in 2010, that was right when I started as a freshman in high school, and that's kind of when I really started to get into football on kind of a nerdier level. They draft him out of Georgia Tech, and I'm going back, and people are kind of like, who's this Demaryius Thomas guy? And me, I'd nerded out watching him on YouTube, so I'm just like, oh no, he's going to be incredible. And then he just like totally lives up to the hype. And I remember that 2011 season so fondly because I got my girlfriend and her family all into football, and that team was so stupid, but they just kept winning. And like to this day, they still watch the Broncos now, like all because of that crazy run, and they couldn't have cared less about football before that. And he was just a special player, so explosive, so many quick screens that he took to the house. Like I don't think there was a more exciting Broncos player in my lifetime in terms of like yak ability, maybe rookie Brandon Marshall, but I don't know. He was a special guy, and this one hurts. It hurts more than anybody that I can ever think of that I didn't actually know personally. So, I don't know. I'm really glad we got to watch him for all those years, though. I'm just trying to focus on that, like all the special moments, all the happy memories.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that I saw so many people say, that DT got them into watching the football, got them to fall in love with the Broncos just because of who he was. Eric, what's your favorite memory of DT?
I mean, it's interesting. Obviously, I didn't cover the Broncos, so I don't have a personal relationship with him like you guys do. But I just remember like we drafted this guy that was like so interesting, this big receiver, and he was the first wideout I think that came off the board like right before Des Bryant, and so
Yep.
there was this whole discussion about whether or not the Broncos made the right choice. He immediately got injured, and it seemed like he was going to be this bust. But he was just like this big body receiver that looked a lot like Brandon Marshall, and like there was just a lot of hope for excitement to come down the line. And all of a sudden, he was just not visible, and then all of a sudden, I just remember one game like he made his presence felt. Like he I can't remember the specifics, but like he caught a touchdown or something, but it was like, oh right, man, like DT, like this guy we were like so excited about. And then DT was like so interesting because he spanned like various like time periods for the Broncos. Like we were in that Tebow era, that like weird, ridiculous time. And then he was then the centerpiece of that Manning era where you just threw a bubble screen to him and he would take it to, like you said, take it to the house every time. He was just like the guy that like was the centerpiece of the most prolific passing offense this league has ever seen. And, I was at Super Bowl 48, like literally the only Broncos player that showed up that day was Demaryius Thomas. Like nobody else cared to even continue to try after they just got shut down and embarrassed. And nobody told DT, man, like he just went out there and just kept catching balls and like was engaged and like had pride and like never quit. Like he was just one of those players that you felt excited about. It actually played to the level that you expected he could. Had like a weird relationship with the fan base, like as the years went on. But like now that time has passed, like you look back, you're like, this guy was incredible. He's like the top Denver Broncos receiver of all time. But arguably, I think he's got the numbers to back it up. But like, I don't know, man. And it's just like another one of these things where you watch a guy's entire career. Like he comes into the league, you watch him play all of his games and retire. And then like now it's like, it takes you to a weird existential place for yourself. You just like realize like how fragile life is and how important it is to appreciate things when they're here. And just a wild feeling, like looking at all of this in totality and like trying to process it, not only as a Broncos fan, but just like as an adult human being, like walking the earth. And it's crazy too. It's nice to see the way that he touched others and, the impact that he left behind and like what it means to actually be a member of a community and do good things and make the most of your time here on earth. So it's like a weirdly emotional day. Like I'm just kind of in a daze, like trying to process all of it.
Yeah, it's you brought up the interesting relationship there with the fans, and I have so much so many feelings about that. Zach knows I took every single chance I could to defend DT against anyone who wanted to talk about the drops and this, that, and the other thing. And Mace used to always say like, oh well, like one day he's gonna have his day in the sun when his jersey or when his name goes up in the Ring of Fame, and all that's gonna be washed away. And it's heartbreaking that we're not gonna get that, but it's happening today. Where like everyone is ready to move past whatever stupid comment they made about him and just appreciate DT. And it's really unfortunate the circumstances, but I do take a little bit of solace in the fact that like people are now ready to appreciate DT for who he was. And I think that there's like a lesson here in terms of the way that you go about your life and the way that you're going to be spoken about on, the day that you pass away. And I think we can learn a lot from DT in that regard because, people used to call into question his toughness. And I used to point to that Super Bowl that you talked about, Eric. Like, this dude gets walloped on the first drive of the game. and it would have been so easy for him to tuck his tail between his legs. And a lot of people use that play as like a microcosm of the game. But what gets lost in there is just how tough he was to get back up. And like you said, he gave more than anyone that day.
Yep.
And the other thing that used to just drive me crazy when people talking about his toughness is just, you clearly don't know where this guy came from. Like, I wrote in the story today, obviously the people who he's living with, his mom, his grandma, his stepdad, are all taken away to jail. And he goes to school, and like he comes back on the school bus, he has no idea what he's supposed to do. Like he doesn't have a home anymore. And for him to be able to, again, just like he, peeled himself off the field in New York, he peeled himself up off the ground there and goes and creates a really special legacy. So it sucks that we lost him, but man, he had an impact on the world that he probably wasn't supposed to have.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at DT, and he was certainly underrated as a player, and you look at the stats, and I think people are still mind blown at how good the stats are. For a 4-year stretch, he averaged nearly 1,500 yards, 100 receptions per season, over 10 touchdowns per year, and then that's incredible. Look what he did after Peyton Manning left. He still had two pretty much 1,000-yard seasons. Just shows how good of a player he was, and the reason that he was undervalued, guys, is because of him. It's because he wasn't willing to go out there and put himself on a pedestal all the time. He was maybe the most humble receiver that I'll ever be around, and that's just like Ryan talked about. That's something that you don't find with athletes nowadays, specifically at that wide receiver position, and that just speaks to exactly who he is. And Allie touched on this a little bit too, but I mean, you're never gonna find a guy that goes up and puts 100 yards out on Sunday. He has to have multiple guys that take him down. He's just getting beat up. He doesn't say anything. And then on Tuesday, he's out there with all of his players at charity events, and he's just this gentle giant in the community, and not taking any credit for it. He was so good in the community, and I just think that really speaks to who he was as a person, is just how well he connected with kids. That just shows how kind and gentle and caring that he was.
And going back to some of his crazy stats, we had a conversation on the Denver Sports Podcast a few months ago about who the most underappreciated player was in Denver sports history. And I do think we came to the conclusion that it was Demaryius Thomas. And we talked a lot about the impact that he had at that point. Before we move on, I got to tell you guys about DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. The Broncos take on the Lions, and that's going to be an interesting one here at Mile High. Broncos fans are feeling good after a rough loss to the Kansas City Chiefs last week, but DraftKings Sportsbook is offering a great promotion when you use the promo code DNVR. If you bet just $1 on any NFL team to score, you can win $100 in free bets. It's that simple. You'll be a winner once a single point is scored on Sunday, Thursday night football, or Monday night football. So bet on those Broncos to come out hot and score at least a field goal. It's going to happen, so definitely use the promo code DNVR. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable, and best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. The holiday season is upon us, and you know what? It's nice to be able to withdraw your cash if you need it for a last-second gift or anything like that. So DraftKings is a great sportsbook app. Download it now. Use the promo code DNVR. Like I said, bet $1 on any NFL team to score, and you win $100 in free bets. If they score, you score. With the promo code DNVR this week at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. You guys know by now that Mint Mobile has the best deals in wireless, and right now, because of the holiday season, when you switch to Mint Mobile and buy any 3-month plan, you'll get another 3 months for free. As the first company to sell premier wireless service online only, Mint Mobile lets you order from home and save a ton with phone plans starting at just $15 a month. You don't have to worry about those sneaky fees that places like AT&T, Verizon might put in there when they're charging you. Plus, you get to avoid the mall, which is a hectic place right now because of the holiday season. I've been using Mint Mobile for a while now. Ryan Koenigsberg, Zach Stevens, we've all really been enjoying our time with them. And the fact that they have just this incredible offer, it's the best offer of the year. Buy 3 months, get 3 months free. You really can't beat that. So for a limited time only, check that out by going to mintmobile.com/DNVR. That's mintmobile.com/DNVR. You can get premier wireless service starting at just $15 a month. Definitely check it out at mintmobile.com/DNVR. I'm trying to get to all of the comments here in the YouTube chat. I appreciate everyone who's hanging out with us. I'm going to hit some super chats real quick before we move on. Brandon here saying, wearing my DT jersey to the Packers game Sunday night out of respect. RIP to a legend. We had, I don't know how to say the name, Blue Liner? Is that just what it is? Blue Liner. DT will live on forever in Broncos country. And then Logan here saying DT was literally the very first Broncos memory I ever had in 2011 against the Steelers. He is the reason I am a diehard Broncos fan. He later continues saying, I don't know if I ever would have watched football or proved people in my life wrong by playing it without DT. Thank you to everyone with those super chats.
One more thing I wanted to mention that just kind of popped out to me. It was just earlier this week that we're talking about the drops and fans' reactions and things they said and whatnot. And I'm sure a lot of people aren't feeling great about that today. But it was just this week when Melvin Gordon said something along the lines of like, "I'd love to be in Denver, but I know a lot of the fans don't feel that way." And I just think it's another lesson that like you're talking to real people when you send these messages. Yeah. And, they do read them and they do feel them. And I just think the combination of those two things happening this week may be just another lesson for us to be kinder to people on social media or otherwise.
100%. All right, I'm going to bring in Michaela Perkins and Big Drive Spence to give some of their favorite memories. Hey, guys, how's it going?
Good to see you all.
Good. How are you?
Good. Wish we were meeting in better terms, but Michaela, let's start off with you. What is a memory you have of Demaryius Thomas?
I mean, I have been a lifelong Broncos fan. I left the hospital in a John Elway jersey. My dad was expecting a boy. I was quite surprised when I came out. So I left the hospital in a John Elway jersey. So I've been a Broncos fan ever since I was born. And I never really took too much interest in sports until I got a little bit older. Unfortunately, I grew up in the Jay Cutler, Kyle Orton fiasco era for the Broncos. So my fandom didn't really start until, Peyton Manning came to this team. And I'm not even kidding. My earliest, most defining memory that I have of being a Broncos fan, besides my grandma screaming at the television every Sunday for the Broncos to go, 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 was that crazy 80-yard touchdown reception from Tim Tebow in the 2012 wildcard game. And that was seriously like the first moment where I was like, I am a diehard Broncos fan. And, my fandom really doesn't exist outside of the world of DT. He was, there when I first really started caring about, football and the Broncos, he was there. And so he has always been a part of my fandom as a Denver Bronco fan. And so, him not being around anymore is just kind of really, honestly, hard to process. I haven't existed, really much in a world without DT in it. And so the news yesterday was just super upsetting. And, I was born in 96, so I haven't really gotten to experience a Denver championship. The Avs won in 96 when I was born and again in 2001, but I was only a couple years old. So the first real championship that I got to experience and remember was, of course, Super Bowl 50, which, of course, DT was also a part of. So, he means everything to me as a Denver fan in general. So it's definitely a really sad day. And my heart goes out to Demaryius's family and friends and all of Broncos country. I know this news has not obviously sat well with any of us, and it's just really sad. So it's been a tough day for sure.
Yeah, I mean, so many people talking today about the Tebow to DT Steelers game, and it's crazy. That game always finds a way to kind of circle back around for us, and it's always been kind of one of those I remember where I was when moments, and it kind of even takes on greater meaning in that way now. For me, I think that's probably the most exciting moment I've ever had as a Broncos fan. Just so much of sports is looking for that moment where you're just losing your mind, jumping up and down, screaming, hugging anyone within radius of you, and like that's the number one moment like that for the Broncos, at least in my lifetime. So
I mean, without a doubt, that was the last game that I was at the stadium as a fan, and so to be there with that electricity, it's the most electric I've ever seen that stadium, and it was all because of DT.
I mean, I wasn't living in Colorado. I was in DC at the time. I knew a bunch of Broncos fans. I was watching that game, and it was just the back and forth. And not even as a Broncos fan, especially because I didn't watch the Broncos at that point. Watching that game, you're just like, oh my God, they're going to do it. Oh my God, it's happening. Like it was one of the best games that I've watched with that excitement. And that was just from a fan of the NFL in general, not even being a Broncos fan at that point. So hearing your stories and hearing everyone recount that specific memory is great. Another one that people talk a lot about was that Cardinals game in 2014 and DT jumping into the stands. And I've seen so many images of that picture out on social media today, and it just makes you smile, his excitement and everything.
Yeah, I mean, real quick, you mentioned like, oh, they're going to do it. Like, I never thought they were going to do it until DT turned the corner, like stiff, puts the stiff arm on, and then I've brought this up on the Broncos podcast a few times. That was a game that people had so little hope for, that tickets were a playoff game, a home playoff game. Tickets were going for under face value. The Broncos backed into the playoffs. They lost maybe one of the worst football games I've ever seen in Week 17 to the Chiefs. They get in kind of, for lack of a better term, on a technicality. And so, and then they're playing, the quote unquote big bad Steelers. And it was just like, no one had them winning that game. No one predicted them winning that game. And I think that's another reason why it's just one of those moments where, like, oh my God, Tebow completes it and DT, no one's going to stop him. It was just electric.
Speaking 100%. Of that
100%.
Chiefs game, just real quick to kind of tie it back to what I was talking about before. I bought tickets to that game for my high school girlfriend. It was her first Broncos game ever. And it was like 9-6 or whatever, the Kyle Orton Chiefs versus the Tim Tebow Broncos. That was me trying to be like, look, the NFL is amazing, right? So we go to this terrible game. I was like, I figured she'd never watch football again. Thank goodness the next week the Steelers game happens and it brings the excitement back and kind of shows. And then we get the Patriots after that, and it's kind of the highs and lows of a big.
Yeah, we don't need to remember that game.
It wasn't just 6-9. It was 6-9, and it was the coldest day of the year. My brother flew in from Japan to watch that game.
Wow.
It was not good. He had his girlfriend this was her first introduction to the concept of football. Was that game.
Oh my
goodness.
So here's what we do. We see no excitement and we stand in the freezing cold. It's called fun.
Absolutely terrible. And then then all of it is washed away with that one play during the playoffs. I actually bet. That was my first legal sports bet.
It was not legal.
Not legal. It was my first overseas sports bet. I bet for the Broncos to beat the big bad Steelers because Ben Roethlisberger was hurt and hobbled, and I knew we were going to do it, but I didn't know we were going to do it like that. And like to be left with that image out of that era, like that most ridiculous era of Broncos football that we'll never forget. But I'm not left with any of those like Tebow miraculous moments. It's like that DT reception and run for the overtime victory is like the thing that I will take. It's crazy.
Spencer,
It's been crazier to think about just how that play fits into that season. Like somehow in the season with the craziest games I've ever seen in my life. Also,
Insane.
you get to the playoffs and have one that's even crazier than those. It's just, it's wild.
Well, I'll piggyback off that play because that's actually my favorite memory of DT, and it's kind of cliche, but what came out of that game for me was pretty wild. I took my uncle to that game, my uncle was like this hard ass dude, never nice to me as a kid. And I only took him because like he could drive and like he was the DD. And Mitchell's still mad at me to this day, 10 years later, for not taking him to that game. But I take my uncle and I'm like, hey, let's go watch this game, whatever. And the dude never said I love you to me, and never I don't think I ever hugged the dude in my entire life. And that play happened, and it was, of course, when the new rules came out. We didn't know if the game was over or not. So he starts jumping up and down, this white-haired, like 60-year-old man, looking at me. He's like, is it over? Did we win? And I was like, yeah, I think so. And he just picks me up, like grabs me, picks me up. He's like, I love you. And it was just, I was so shocked in that moment because I was like, dude, you've never, like, all you've told me my whole life is how bad I was at baseball, or why didn't I catch that ball, or this or that. And now all of a sudden he's like hugging me because of what DT did. And that moment was just so special. And I think what's crazy about this story is obviously 33 is way too young. DT was with the Broncos basically his whole career, but went to a few other places he was with the Patriots for not even an official game, I think. And guys like Tom Brady talk about the impact that he had. Guys that maybe had one interaction with him, everybody's got something to say about it. And I think once we look back at this, like it's still pretty fresh in everybody's mind. It'll encapsulate how truly special of not an athlete, but a person DT was. And just by looking at, I follow a lot of Broncos fans, Broncos players on Twitter, but even going to like the Tom Brady's and going to the players that played with him for 1 year, Jets players, Eric Decker, guys like that were with him in Denver and then left, truly had an impact on all their lives as a person. And then on the cherry on top he was maybe the best, most dominant Broncos receiver ever, stuck with us through Peyton, through Trevor Siemian, through Tim Tebow, through all the crap, and never said a word about it, just played his game and dominated.
Sunday is going to be an emotional one at Mile High. The Broncos take on the Lions, and we will be having our DMVR Mile High tailgate right off of Federal and 18th Street. It is always such a fun time to be there around the community, talking football, talking Broncos, and eating good food and drinking some delicious Breck brews. Sexy Pizza caters our Broncos tailgates, and they are so freaking good. They're as local as it gets. They've been in the community for 13 years now. A hand-tossed deck oven pizza with made from scratch each morning dough. It's so good. They also have gluten-free options, and if you go into one of their locations, you can check out their vegan options, 12, 16, or 18-inch crusts. Sexy Pizza is sure to be the right fit for you. You can add all the fixins with wings, salads, pasta knots, or dessert options, and you can try those all out at the DMVR Mile High tailgate as well. It's going to be a great one this weekend, a time of remembering. It's going to be cool to see all of the 88 jerseys that fill the stadium. And like I said, sometimes all you need is to be surrounded by good people, drink good pizza, drink good beer, and eat some good pizza. So definitely check out the DMVR Mile High tailgate. Here we have Sean saying in the comments, nice to be in a space with a community who understands why this hit me so hard. Love to all of you guys. And I've seen a lot of people bring this up. And for me, it was that similar reaction of when you heard the news about Kobe. This was the same for me in the sense of like not believing that it was real. Like you started hearing the rumors circulate and you were like, no. I was looking and I was trying to find, I was like, this can't be true. No way. And I saw everyone tweeting that like, no, not DT. And a few players came out and said the same thing. And so it was just, Kobe left such an impact on a lot of people's lives. And you see that Demaryius Thomas in the Denver community meant so much, an impact like that, the legacy that he left, and then on the NFL community as a whole. He was just such a special player, and that's why we felt like today we had to do this. We had to come in and talk about all the great memories, and reminisce on this, because he was such a wonderful person and player, and it was something we had to do, and we wanted to include the community in that. So Ryan sent out a tweet earlier today asking for anyone who had any personal experience with DT that they wanted to share. Feel free to drop them below. He wants to read a few of them. So Ryan, I'll let you take the floor on this.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to piggyback off something that Spencer said about Tom Brady. Like, little things that I've just noticed today. You saw that picture that Tom posted, and that's a picture that's on Tom Brady's phone that he took. He wanted to take a selfie with Demaryius Thomas. Like just little things like that. It's like, wow, like I don't know. It's just, that's Tom Brady. He wanted to take a selfie with DT when he saw him. The reaction that DT had when Peyton sent him a video congratulating him on his retirement. And I thought it was just such a, something that encapsulates how humble he was, that he was like surprised that Peyton Manning would send him a message congratulating him on his retirement. He's like, wow, I really wasn't expecting that. Obviously he and Peyton had so many great years together. It's just, I hope that, deep down he really did know the impact that he had on so many people, because he was so humble. You definitely wouldn't know from him that he didn't know that. I'll go through a couple of these stories that people sent in. First one from the homie Chill Doozy. He said, played basketball with DT at Lifetime and Centennial in 2011. Got to be on his team, which was awesome. We ran off 7 wins. Highlight was a kid on the other side yelling, "Can you dunk?" So then he steals the ball from this dude, runs to the other end of the floor, and just tomahawks one. It was really funny because he was so laid back in the game. He was just shooting threes all throughout, not exerting himself at all. And then he puts on a show for one possession, and it was awesome. And that's something that, I think maybe more people are learning today. Like, DT was a legit hooper. That was his first love in sports. He always thought he was going to be, a professional basketball player. And a lot of people around Denver got the opportunity to play basketball with him when he was a player, because he would get a run in whenever he could.
He was at that Lifetime every Monday. It was a blast. I got to play with him a few times, and it was unreal. He was always there.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
Okay, there's so many here. Luke came in here and said the husband of a former coworker was a principal, a teacher for an elementary school in Fort Collins. He had a student who was going through a really hard time. The student was a huge DT fan. The teacher reached out to the Broncos on a whim, and shortly after DT reached out, talked to the student on the phone for an hour or so, and then brought the student to a game and swagged him out. Like, the little personal touches that he would do on something like that is just beautiful.
Yeah, and the thing with that is it's totally under the radar. No one knew about that and that's who DT was. He did the right things and just didn't want any credit, any notice for it.
Brian Severance here said in 2012, DT randomly showed up to a bar in Pueblo, Colorado. He was the coolest, bought everyone drinks, took time to chat with anyone who wanted to, took pictures and everything. That's an example of just what you said, Zach. Just to do it, just to be a part of the community, and people wanted to talk to him. He was going to talk to them.
If you go to a bar in Pueblo, literally the last thing you would ever expect to happen is Bronco to come in and buy the whole bar drinks. From Jay here, 2 players I ever met that took time with each and every fan, TD and DT. I've never been blessed to go to games often, so I went to a free scrimmage at Invesco. My son was maybe 4 at the time. We sat at the gate for an hour, for hours for any autographs from any player who stayed. The only 2 who stayed behind were Evan Mathis and DT. He would tell every single kid that thanked him for his autograph that I can't wait to be wearing your jersey in a few years. It hit my son right there just to know he had a chance to become an NFL player, and that current player would be rooting for him in the future. And that's another thing I've seen pop up a bunch today, is people saying DT would always, tell the kids, one day I'm going to be wearing your jersey. One day I'm going to be wearing your jersey.
88
That's too
here.
cool.
tweeted, when I was 16, I went to a signing he was doing at Sports Authority. All I had was one of those shirts that tried to imitate a jersey, and I was embarrassed that I couldn't afford a jersey. When I got to the signing table, I told him he was my favorite player, and I apologized that I didn't have a real jersey yet. He looked at me with that smile, and he said, all good, bro. When you get to the league, I'll be wearing your jersey. He made me feel like I was a real someone.
And I think that's one of the things that I try to touch on in my article. Like, when you talk to DT, he made you feel like just being around him made you feel better about yourself. He just exuded this warmth, the way that he was like looked you in the eyes when you talked to him. It really did make you feel important. Ryan B here says, my dad and I were season ticket holders for the longest time. I have so many great memories with him in the stands, but my favorite was 2011 at the first playoff game. We stood in the south stands as DT broke free for the game-winning touchdown. My dad and I danced and celebrated with the rest of Broncos Country for what seemed like an hour. I know it's not a personal moment with DT, but he gave me a very special moment with my dad that we always talk about. And that kind of goes along the lines of what you were saying, Spence.
Yeah, his impact is just it's so far and wide from every national media, this should never happen to somebody under the age of 40, under the age of 50, whatever you want to pick it is, but it's honestly, it's insane how many people he reached, and every story is like, yo, he didn't feel like a professional athlete, because we deal with professional athletes here and there that you're like, you don't say it out loud, but you're like, wow, that dude was not what I expected. And there's not one of those stories coming from DT. So
they say when you work in sports to never meet your heroes, because professional athletes, they don't necessarily have to go out of their way to be kind to everyone that they meet, or to take the extra time to, talk to their fans, take pictures, whatever it is. But that was never an issue with DT. And it's really hard to fake being genuine and being kind. And DT was the kindest and the most genuine of them all. And I think, people like him are really rare. And I think this is a big loss for the sports world just in general.
I was about to say that, Michaela. They always say don't meet your heroes, but DT was the complete opposite of that. Anyone who could wanted to meet DT. And then someone else, Jason here, shared a picture of his son and DT. And again, you saw so much of that with DT and kids. It was just his favorite thing. And something that, Ryan, you wrote in that article that I've been feeling today, that makes me tear up, is he would have been an incredible father. And you just know that with how much of a father he was to all of these players' kids and everyone he met. And so that really hurts my heart, because you just know that he would have been that.
Yep, that's tough. I mean, he talked about in that Players Tribune article that I hyperlinked in that story, just about how kids need to hear that they're loved, and they want people to tell them that they care about them, and how that's the most important thing. And I really think, he obviously takes that away from a part of his life when he didn't get that, but he did get a part of his life, where he was taken in by some family members, and they really did take him under their wing and take care of him and tell him they cared about him. And I think for him, he just realized how important that was, and he wanted to spread that around to as many kids as possible. So while it's so sad, that he wasn't able to be a father, it's almost kind of poetic that he was able to spread the love that he would have had for his own children around to so many others.
And piggybacking off of that, I've had a lot of people reach out to me in the past 12 hours saying, I really want to donate in honor of DT for everything he did. And I think a great place to start is at your local Boys and Girls Club, because that's where DT had such a big impact, and it's getting to exactly what he loved. And it also speaks to that, so many players said that they referred to him as a brother and as a father figure that he was to so many people's children. And that's I think where he would really appreciate if you do want to donate at your local Boys and Girls Club.
Very well said. Yeah, I mean, he, at the age of 11, he was left to take care of his 9-year-old and 3-year-old sister. And so, kids became so important to him, and trying to give them that positive influence. He was literally at 11 years old, getting up at 6 a.m. to try and go get a couple of hours of work in before school to have a little bit of money for them. he really took it upon himself to try and make a positive impact for kids after going through stuff like that.
And never said a negative thing about it.
Exactly.
No.
Is there any other ones that you want to read, Ryan?
Yeah, here's one from Zach, who says a coworker has a kid with cerebral palsy. In 2015, DT took the time to FaceTime with him when he was recovering from a surgery at Children's Hospital. He was so great in the community. I mean, Zach points it out, and it's worth pointing out again. No one knew these stories before today. Maybe, of course, the people who are close to these people, but DT did so much behind the scenes. Just like the simple little thing of taking a FaceTime call. There's so many athletes out there who, I'm air quoting this, but don't have the time for that. Don't have the time to take and do those little touches. And there are some too who do take the time, but want the credit for that, want it recorded or whatever. DT just did this stuff because he cared, and we're lucky that he was a part of our community.
100%. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. Unless you guys have anything else you want to say here on the panel. Michaela, Spence, Justin, Zach, Ryan, the floor is yours. I think we've done as much as we could remembering Demaryius Thomas. If you guys have anything else you want to say before we end the show, please do.
My heart is with you, Broncos country. We're all in this together, for sure.
Yeah, I know when things like this happen, everyone says to, call your loved ones and things like that, tell them you love them. And so do that. But then on top of it, what I think DT has impacted with us is be positive and have a smile, and just how far that can go. And as we're seeing today, just how far one person doing that, how far of an impact that had. What if all of us do that, or, all of us do it most of the time, how far that can go.
Yeah, I mean,
you mentioned. Go
ahead, Justin. Go ahead, Justin.
Just the impact he had on so many people's lives, either directly or indirectly. I mean, we just sat here for 45 minutes and talked about all the things he did for people without trying to get the promotion, or all the positive memories people have, whether it's Spencer with his uncle, or, I started thinking back to going to both those AFC championships with my dad. And DT he played a really big role in so many of our lives, I think. And obviously sports just have a way to bring us together. And I don't know, it sucks that we've lost such a influential and such a significant part of such a fun Broncos run, such an important member of the history of this franchise. And I don't know, I've been really emotional this week. I have to go to a funeral tomorrow, so I've been kind of reflective anyways, but I hope that someday when I die, people will be able to look back and say, he made my life better, because I feel like that's the way we view Demaryius Thomas. So just, try and leave a positive impact.
Yeah, that's what I was going to finish with, is just, everyone looking for ways that they want to pay tribute to DT. And obviously, Zach mentioned donating to the Boys and Girls Club. That's a great way to do it. But, there's a quote that everyone's heard before that I think applies so well to DT, which is, you truly can judge someone's character by what they do for people who do nothing for them. And I think he was he highlighted that so well. So if you want to pay tribute to him, do something kind for someone who can't do anything for you.
I see a lot of people here in the comments saying wear your 88 jersey to any NFL game that you go to on Sunday. And I think that it would be the most incredible thing to see Mile High just full of number 88 jerseys. And I think that would mean a lot to everyone in this community, because we are all in this together, like Michaela said, and our hearts are here for Broncos Country. We're a part of Broncos Country, and we're sending as much love and prayers and good energy we can to his family, to his mom, to his sisters, and to everyone who loved Demaryius Thomas. That's going to do it for today's show. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, guys. I had Logan here say, love every single one of y'all. Be safe and go Broncos. And please be safe. Tell the people you love them. And we will see you guys on Sunday when the Broncos take on the Lions. Bye, guys.